Howdy howdy, it is Low. Welcome back to another episode of Beating the Backlog. You know what it is, it's the series where I talk about, review, all these fucking games in my backlog. And today we're looking at a pretty special little game. We're looking at Cuphead, which is a 2017 indie game developed and published by Studio MDHR. This is their very first game. So, Cuphead is a 2D side-scrolling platformer, shooter, sort of run-and-gun sort of game. Harkens a lot back to the old school era of those kinds of games with, you know, like your Contras, even your Mega Mans, your Gunstar Heroes. And this game in particular, for me, I've had a pretty complicated history with it. I actually purchased it first on PC, and I did a couple of streams of it, and I was playing around. I didn't even finish like half of the first world, and I refunded it because I was literally playing on like this absolutely just bottom of the barrel like laptop, and it couldn't run the game very well. I know that's kind of sad. So what I ended up doing actually was I bought the game on Xbox One, and I played it for about a month again, and I quit again. So now I finally came back and took the time to beat it. So coming back to it, you know, I actually wasn't as aggravated as I was back then. Of course, I've had some slight temperament changes nowadays. I'm a lot less agitated towards games, but even still, just coming back, I was really able to appreciate the game for what it was, and I had a lot of fun with it, honestly. So the general plot of this game, it's nothing like super big. Basically, Cuphead and Mugman are gambling and stuff, and one day they end up fucking up, losing, and the devil's like, alright, so here's what you're gonna do. You're going to collect everyone's debt for me, beat them up, you know, take their debt, and that's pretty much all you do for the whole game. And it's a pretty basic plot. Even like the ending, where it's supposed to be like a twist, you know, you can kind of see it coming like a mile away. But it is pretty much just there to sort of serve as a framework and just as a little spot for the actual game to rest. And the actual game is, as you would guess, it's very polished, very enjoyable, very just really well designed through and through. It's really not too different from any other of the 2D side-scrolling shooters like I mentioned earlier, but it does have its own spins, of course most noticeably being the way this game looks and is stylized, harkening back to those like early 1900s like cartoons, and it's a really well pulled off style. There are videos on YouTube you can find of like behind the scenes with this game, and it is honestly just insane how much work went into it. They made like actual models and would like take videos of it, and those end up being in the game. Just like stuff like that. There's a lot of work that went into it. Obviously the animation's pretty detailed, very well done. Lots of drawings, lots of you know, animation cells and all that. I might have just said something completely wrong because that's not my forte, but I will say it is just pretty crazy how much work went into it, and it definitely pays off at the end of the day. Some other spins this game has, though, somewhat smaller things, but things I enjoy. The screen, when you die in the game, you get a screen that shows your progress in the boss battle, which is actually pretty helpful. You can see how far you were along a certain phase of the boss, and you can also get some, depending on what phase you died on, you can get some specific flavor text from the boss, basically trash talking you. It's kind of funny to me, just the way that it does that, sort of on a subconscious level, just wants you to keep going and actually come out on top. But it's also kind of funny. Some of those lines are just so savage. And the actual boss phases in this game, which I'll kind of go into a little bit more later, but They're just really unique, and it is, again, I have to mention, the animation and art really help bring these battles and these worlds and these levels, scenarios, blah blah blah, that brings it all to life in a really fantastic way. And this game does have a shop, which not all of those old school run and gun games would have. Now Mega Man like 7, 8, I believe, basically every Mega Man after 7 does have a shop where you can buy items and stuff. But this game, it's a little bit more woven into the game, I guess. It's a lot more almost mandatory because you actually get your other weapons from these shops, and I mean, you can try to beat the game with the pea shooter, but I'm just gonna say it's not gonna be an easy time. You are very well off gathering up some coins and going to the shop and buying more weapons, because it will lead to a much more enjoyable experience, I guess. Not only that, but also, depending on how you like to play, different weapons definitely serve those kinds of purposes. If you're a little bit more patient player, you can use the charge weapon, which, as the name says, you can charge up to deal more damage compared to just shooting it over and over. So kind of like Mega Man's Mega Buster, how you can charge that up. So you can use that, and it's a pretty powerful weapon. It's definitely viable. Or you can go, if you're a little bit more aggressive, if you like getting up in the boss's face, you can take the spread weapon, because it spreads, and the closer you are, the more damage you're going to do. So it's little trade-offs like that that I really like to experiment with. Just seeing which weapons are really the best for certain bosses, and also just however I feel like playing that day. Again, the controls, not much different from a standard fare for this sort of genre, but they are really fluid in my opinion. There's 8-directional aim, like in Contra, but unlike Contra, you can actually stand still, lock in place, and then aim around, which has its uses. It sounds kind of useless, but I will say it does have its uses at some points, and it helps you kind of get that more precision. The game, of course, would also have a jump and a crouch. You can dash, and you can get a power-up called the Smoke Bomb, which makes your dash not... It's not like this, it's more like... that's a bad way to explain it. Basically, you just jump from one point to the other instead of actually dashing, so you get kind of like iframes, sort of. You're not really there, so it's not really iframes, it's just like you literally phase through it. It's kind of hard to explain without actually seeing it, but the point is, it's just a different way that the game can let you use the dash. So yeah, not much different for the controls here. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? I mean, there's really no reason to change it that much. And for a game like this, that's really just kind of paying homage to those sorts of games. I mean, it's only like mandatory that it would be like that. So there's also, along with boss fights, you have run and gun levels, which are very much similar to like Contra's levels, in that you have just every enemy in the game just focusing in on you at once, and it's just hectic all throughout, and you have to get to the end. You can shoot the enemies, you can also collect coins, and this is really the big reason for doing these levels, because you can get like 5 coins each time, or each level, and that can definitely, it's like your main source of coins basically for the shop. So these are technically optional, because the bosses are the only thing you have to fight to get to the end of the each area and the end of the game, obviously. But you can, and you probably should, do the run and gun levels, because they are mandatory for getting those coins and actually having a good time. So I don't really like these levels too much. I mean, I think obviously they serve a purpose, and they aren't terribly made. Besides Perilous Piers, I just absolutely despise that level. But they do have a nice feel to them, especially with that kind of like retro sort of throwback style. They're alright, they're alright. The bosses, though, are definitely the highlight of the game, of course. There's so many different styles of bosses, so many different like actual enemies as the bosses. You know, you have your giant robots, you have your dragons, you have your vegetables, you have an actress, you have a mermaid. It just literally goes on. You literally fight a double. So yeah, the bosses are just absolutely my favorite part of the game. The art, again, I keep bringing it up, the animation and art really brings these fights to life and gives them that extra zing, bazinga. I don't fucking know. There's these, like I said earlier, there's the different phases of the bosses that are pretty interesting. The transitions between the phases are really clever, and they kind of help you from a gameplay point as well, because you can actually just use these times to actually get more damage on the boss as it's transitioning phases. But also the animation is really cool, and some of these different phases are pretty just out there. Like they're kind of out of left field at some points. One of my favorite examples is kind of a spoiler for this boss, by the way. Cala Maria. I may have said that wrong. In Aisle 3, it's the mermaid boss, and you know, pretty standard at the start. She will use all kinds of aquatic creatures to attack you, and then near basically like halfway through the fight, these eels will come out and shock her, and she turns into Medusa, and it's kind of crazy just how out of left field that is, but it works really well and just changed up the fight so much from there. So as I said earlier, the game is just very stylistic. I've said this so many times by now, but the way it really harkens back to that like old animation sort of vibe, it's just pretty amazing. Everything from a presentation standpoint is top notch here. I can't really go too much in depth, for one because I'm lazy as fuck and it's like 2 a.m. in the morning, but also it really is just like you have to see it to believe it, really. And you see gameplay on the screen right now, and you know it looks good, I'm sure, but you really have to get into the game yourself to really kind of appreciate it. And that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I really think it's true. The animations, fluid, smooth, well made. The soundtrack is also really cool in that it actually, just like the animation, it brings back elements from that time. It's a pretty eclectic soundtrack. You got these kind of like barber, ragtime sort of tracks, especially like the very intro of the game. That theme is definitely in that vein, and most of the soundtrack has this big band jazz sort of sound, and it's definitely great, especially for the bosses. It works really well, and it really sets the tone pretty nicely. But yeah, some of my favorite from the bosses, Floral Fury, of course, is a classic at this point. The theme for Cagney Carnation, the flower boss in Aisle 1. The Carnival Kerfuffle, Beppy the Clown's theme in Aisle 2. Always love that one. It's a banger. It's a banger. And Fiery Frolic, which is Grim Matchstick the Dragon's theme, also in Aisle 2. Definitely a good one. And there's a lot of themes in this game I really like. So the point is, it's definitely necessary for the game to sound like this, and I think they pulled it off just super well. It really all comes together, everything in the presentation department. Even these zany like cartoon sound effects, like when you die you get this and it's like yes, this has to happen. This is great. So complaints, like at this point I've said nothing but good things about the game pretty much. I don't really have any complaints. I guess I do have a couple of just minor things. The game I feel is a little short. Now, of course, it is harkening back to some retro styles, so that's kind of expected. And there's not really a way you can make a game like this much longer without it becoming obnoxious. But I do feel it could be maybe like just a few more bosses. I know they were going to, or maybe are still going to add DLC. So maybe that can kind of help for people to get their extra helping of the game. But it feels a little short, maybe a little lopsided. Like Aisle 1 and Aisle 2 just feels so much shorter than Aisle 3. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just bad. And of course, probably the biggest thing, it's necessary. There's really no way to avoid it for this kind of game, especially considering it's emulating retro styles. I'm sorry that I'm like fidgeting in my chair so much. I don't know if that's annoying, but this game is like through and through trial and error. It is absolutely just 100% trial and error. You have to play the bosses, unless you're the godliest of gamers, trademark. You literally have to play these bosses like 2, 3, even more times just to learn what they do, what their phases are, what their attacks are like, which weapons to use. And it can get a little rough, not gonna lie. It can get a little rough. People meme about the Dark Souls comparisons, and obviously they're pretty stupid, but if they have one thing in common, is definitely that they are unforgiving games, and they will require you to put in your effort to get something out of it and to actually learn. It's not very easy. The game does have difficulty settings, but they may not be what they seem, and that's all I can really say on that. So my final thoughts here. Cuphead, definitely a game I would recommend. It is just such an enamoring experience. Even if you're not into this kind of run and gun 2D retro style game, I feel it could actually probably convert you. Maybe not convert you. That's kind of a dumb way to say it. It can definitely like make you change your perspective on these sorts of games. And even if you end up just not liking it that much overall, I feel that getting this experience with these kinds of visuals and this soundtrack and this overall vibe is definitely something worth trying out. It is without a doubt one of my new favorite indie games. I say that about every new indie game I play, and I have. There are some I consider better than this, but it is definitely up there. And for Studio NVHR, I cannot wait to see what they do next. I'm feeling a solid 8 out of 10 on this one. It's a good game. It is a very good game. Alright. Thank you for watching Beating the Backlog. If you don't want to hear anything about my videos or my channel, click off now. Thanks for watching. And if you're still here, I'm not really going to say much. I was just going to say that I kind of ranted a lot in this video. This is kind of a new style where I just give myself bullet points and just kind of say what comes to my mind. I used to try this a long time ago, and it kind of didn't work out too well, but I feel maybe now I can maybe pull it off a little bit better. So, if this is cool to you, then please let me know, because feedback's always appreciated. And if you're a fan of this is another thing I tried out. It's more noticeable, I'd say. Well, probably just as noticeable is the camera. And I did this on my Left 4 Dead 2 review video that not a lot of people probably knew existed. But it's something I tried there, and I kind of like the feel of it. And really, my only complaint with this style is I can't really find a good way to put the gameplay in without it kind of being like out of place, sort of. So I might have to experiment more with that. But feedback on this camera style is definitely appreciated too. I feel there's a bit more of a connection, and it's just a little bit less samey, maybe annoying. I don't know what the word is. If I have the webcam up, not the webcam, the camera. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for watching the review. Feedback always appreciated, and you're the best. Love you. Have a good night. It's 2 a.m. I need to have a good night, like right after this ends. And take care. Peace.